Anger. How to control anger. So you may have heard of anger management classes where you're supposed to go to learn how to manage anger. And in reality, anger is not so easy to manage. It feels like when we get angry, it's just, ooh, and we're gone, 0 to 60. Has that ever happened to you? Somebody triggers you, someone does something, and all of a sudden, you're in their face. You're like, what are you talking about? What are you talking about? Da, da, da. You're yelling at people, or you're getting angry and pushing over items and throwing things. It can happen so fast that you wonder, how did I get here? I didn't even think about it. I just was suddenly in this situation. I remember that happening to myself. I had already started counseling, um, or doing counseling work for folks, and I was just at the bank. I think I was like at an ATM or something like that, and then right outside the bank, I don't remember the details anymore because this was years ago, but there was a woman who was parked there, and I think the guy behind her got angry that she parked instead of kept going because he thought that he was that that no one should stop there, and so he got mad that he didn't that she parked her car, and instead of just going around her, they just laid on the horn and was like yelling or something like that. So um, I think he pulled up beside her and started like cursing her out, which I just found to be so inappropriate. And something snapped in me. And next thing I know, I had like, I think I must have walked over a little bit and I was yelling at the guy. I was like, hey, leave her alone, pick on someone your own size type thing. I think it looked like, he was picking on someone that he viewed as weaker than him or smaller than him in some way. And it was just something in me, just like, oh, no, you are not about to do that. And so I just started standing up for her or whatever. And I remember having that feeling of being like, wow, that was so quick. Like, I don't remember an actual thought process of how I went from standing in front of a bank to yelling at this guy. And that's how anger can be. It can be like all of a sudden you're snapped into action. A lot of times, a sense of righteousness, a sense of justice, indignation can cause us to become very angry, start snapping on someone right away. And sometimes it can be disastrous. You might have heard of uh, the situation with Joe McKnight, a former NFL player, and Ronald Gasser, a 54-year-old man who was driving another car. And Joe McKnight was driving through traffic when he and Ronald Gasser began cutting each other off on the highway. The tensions escalated quickly, and according to reports, the vehicles chased and taunted one another for miles. Eventually, both ended up at an intersection. Gasser was in his car. McKnight exited his vehicle and approached him, possibly to confront him verbally. But Gasser, already enraged, pulled out a gun and shot McKnight 3 times, killing him on the spot. There was no physical altercation, just rage, fear, impulsive action. The guy who shot him claimed self-defense, but the court saw it differently, and he was convicted of manslaughter and sentenced 30 years in prison. So this former NFL player just lost his life, just like that. Over what? Road rage. We got to get control of our anger. It's a life or death situation. It could really mean life or death. We could spend time in jail for something we do. I had a client who was working with me and she was making progress, but she stopped her sessions, as clients do sometimes. And she had gone a while without doing her sessions. And she snapped. One day her stepdaughter said something, and she snapped, put hands on her stepdaughter, got physical. She ended up going to jail for it. Jail. Can you imagine? It can happen to any of us. You're not immune. I'm not either. We need to be in control. of our anger. We need to learn how to manage our anger. So, first thing for anger management is to know what to do with that feeling initially, right? First thing for anger management is to know what to do with that initial that feeling. Most people fall into the thought process that they need to vent their anger. That is a false belief. And so we feel like we need to yell at the person about what we're upset about and confront them, or we feel like we need to call someone so that we can talk all the mess we want to talk and say all the things that happen. Mm, I got to call my girlfriend. When we get on the phone, girl, you won't believe what happened. Okay, first of all, he did this, and then I did this, and then can you believe this? And we're talking and we're talking, we're talking. Can you believe my husband, my boyfriend, he said this and he said that, and then this? That's ridiculous, isn't it? But when we do that, we say, oh, it's okay, I'm just venting. But you're not actually releasing the anger, you're rehearsing the anger. You're not releasing it, you're rehearsing it. You're saying it to yourself over and over and over. You're reminding yourself of exactly what it is that troubled you, that bothered you, that triggered you, and you're replaying the same trigger and replaying the same anger response, and you're getting others to validate you. Hey, don't you agree that they were in the wrong and I'm in the right? Why do you need someone to validate what you know to be right? Why are you calling someone else to let them know that there was something upsetting that happened? You don't assume there's enough upsetting things happening in their life already? Why do you need to call another human to regulate your emotions? Why do you need to call another human to regulate your emotions? Our emotions are not dependent on what other people do for us. So when we try to yell at the person who we think made us angry, that's not helpful because the other person can't regulate your emotions. When you try to call someone on the phone to tell them all about why you're angry, it's not necessarily helpful because it's not up to other people for you to regulate your emotions. So what should we do instead of getting on the phone or calling someone or going home and venting out to our family? What should we do instead? Well, just the opposite. We should actually remain silent. When something comes that triggers us, that angers us, the first thing you should do is close your mouth and remain silent. But whoa, wait a second. You can't tell me that I'm supposed to suppress my emotions. Is that what you're saying? Because I learned that I'm not supposed to suppress my emotions. Remaining silent isn't an emotional suppression. Remaining silent is a control of body parts, right? Remember that just because you're angry, that doesn't become an excuse for anything you do consequentially. Can a man who beats up on his employees say, well, I have to hit my employees when I get angry because I don't want to suppress my emotions? Does that sound like a good excuse? Are you going to say, he didn't want to suppress his emotions. That's why he had to punch Johnny. You know, you can't expect him to hold all that and bottle that up inside. Not a good excuse, right? It's the same thing with us if we're a yapper or a yeller and we say, oh, I got to vent. Remaining silent is not suppressing your emotions, it's controlling body parts. So your first thing to do is to remain silent. You're going to control your body parts, your tongue, your lips. Just put the lips together. Don't let anything come out of them. Okay. You can breathe. You can blink. You need to remain silent. If you're venting, that's not releasing, that's rehearsing. In our silence, we need to take a moment to think and become analytical about what we're actually going through. To think and become analytical. What does that mean? Well, we have to ask ourselves some questions. Okay. Um, we need to ask ourselves, why am I feeling triggered? Am I actually in a life or death situation? Only when we're in life or death situations is it appropriate to default to fight, flight, freeze, and fawn. When you're not in a life or death situation, it doesn't make sense for you to respond like it's a survival 1/12 of a second amygdala response. You don't need to do that. So ask yourself, is this actually a life or death situation right now? Or is this just feel scary because someone did something that was unjust or violated a boundary or whatever it is, right? A lot of times it's an injustice, right? That makes us feel very angry. We're witnessing it happen to someone else, or we feel like someone's mistreating us in some type of way. And then we need to analyze the actual emotion itself because anger is an upgrade of the primary emotion that you're really feeling. Anger is an upgrade. We actually choose to reverberate in anger because the emotion we're feeling beneath the anger feels too vulnerable. Beneath the anger, you will find when you meditate for just a moment that the initial feeling isn't anger. The initial feeling is sadness or vulnerability or humiliation or irritation. There's something happening in our reality or in our perception that makes us feel a feeling that's a little bit unbearable. And instead of expressing that emotion, it could be fear. But instead of expressing that emotion, we go to anger. And I've seen this happen so many times. In fact, there was a near road rage incident where I pulled out, and apparently I didn't see this guy. So he had to evade me, but he was so angry that I didn't see him that he followed me into the parking lot and started yelling at me and confronting me. But why was he so angry? Is it maybe because he was afraid? Sometimes we default to anger when we really feel fear. And then on top of the fear that he initially felt, then that went into the injustice and the righteousness that he felt that he saw and I didn't see. He did the right thing and I did the wrong thing. And so now we're in a scary confrontation. And that could have ended badly the way he was yelling at me if I had been a different person, right? Gratefully, I was able to resolve it very calmly. And for those who want to know how that story ended, I walked up to his car and I said, um, what's wrong? I said something like, what's bothering you? And he said, well, you pulled out in the blah, 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 such and such and so and so. And I said, oh, so you had to evade me. And he said, yeah. And I said, well, thank you very much. I appreciate that. It's good that you didn't crash into me. I apologize for not seeing you. And then that was it. And I just drove off. At that point, to get any angrier, he would look dumb in front of his wife, who was right there. Just handled it calmly in that situation. But imagine if I had been someone else who couldn't control his anger and his pride and his rage. And I went in the trunk and grabbed something I was going to use to defend myself. You see the problem? We really have to get that anger under control. So if we take the time to think and analyze what the feeling is, the fear, the injustice, what is it that we're feeling beneath the anger? It's better to express that emotion or work through that emotion. So what is it? Anxiety, sadness, boredom, irritation of some type? What is it? Write it down on a piece of paper when you're feeling anger, and then ask yourself, why does this bother me so much? Why is this so important to me? In this way, you're able to actually work through the emotion. You're actually able to work through it. When you're not in a life or death situation, believe it or not, you have time to actually think about why something's bothering you so much. You don't need to respond right away. Just take your time. In the situation where the woman attacked her stepdaughter, imagine if she had just done this. I'm going to remain silent first. Then I'm going to walk away and go analyze what I'm really feeling beneath this anger. What is it really about this that really bothers me so much? This is a good time to use the jot method, where we write down on the page what specifically is bothering us. We ask ourselves, why is that bothering us so much? Or why is that so important to me? And then when you have the answer, you might ask it again. Why is that bothering me so much? Why is that so important to me? Until you find a distorted thought. Then you put that in the voice of like a child or even an adult child that's coming to you for advice. And you pretend like you're giving advice to your son or your daughter. And you write down your advice on the piece of paper and it regulates your emotions instantaneously. Process takes less than 5 minutes, but it can save lives and it can definitely save you a heart attack or just feeling of anger, feeling out of control. You have the ability to regulate your emotions by changing the perception. All of our anger comes from our perception of the situation. That's why we need to remain silent and analyze so that we can adjust the perception accordingly because we need to take in more information than just what we have so far. We don't always know everything right off the bat. So we think we see it, we think we've got it, but we don't always know. We need time to process, to analyze, to ask questions. So step one is to be silent. Step two, we need to think. We need to think first before acting. In the third step, it is now up to you to release energy in an appropriate manner. In my recent TikTok video, I talked about humor, specifically laughing. You'll find that a lot of things that make us angry are the same things that make us laugh. When Seinfeld, famous comedian, was asked, how do you get so much material for your TV shows and your comedy, stand-up comedy? He said, irritation is a source of comedy. Whatever it is that irritates you is also funny. And he's right. He's right. Things that irritate us, if you talk about them from the right angle and the right way, you also got yourself a little bit of a comedy routine. In fact, you can have your friends and family in stitches telling them about something that irritated you. It's funny. And also the way other people look when they're acting out of control can be funny. And the irony of certain situations, the coincidence of situations, you're carrying items, something you really don't want to drop, and then you drop it. It's frustrating, it's upsetting, but it's also kind of funny. And you can laugh just like that. Of course, of course. The one item I didn't want to drop is the item I dropped. What I just did right there, that reaction, it's emotionally regulating. I'm holding up the pizza. I don't want to drop the pizza. I drop the pizza. Instead of cursing, I instead laugh. Of course, I would drop the pizza. Of course. Oh, yeah. And of course, it fell face down and it's everywhere. Hmm. What I just did there is I regulated my emotions. When you laugh, it releases endorphins. And I'm switching the perception just slightly from this isn't fair, life isn't fair, everything bad happens to me, to of course it does. Of course it's not. Of course it would. It's regulating. Someone comes up to you, they say something harsh, mean, snide, passive aggressive. or outright cruel, and you laugh, shake your head, walk away. What is that? It's a release of energy, but it's a constructive one. It's constructive to keep you from snapping or losing patience. You just find humor in the situation, smile or laugh a little bit, just walk away. So practice that tool. Practice finding anger in the things that irritate you in the moment. A lot of times we laugh later. Laugh right now. Just think about it right now. Think about what just happened. Throw your hands up in the air. Nobody died. Maybe we can find some humor in it. Not at all times. Not at all times is laughter the appropriate response, but it's one tool in your tool belt. It's one tool in your tool belt. What's another good thing that can help us or help us to release energy when we're feeling upset? Well, some have talked about exercising, stretching. Good. You go for the walk, you go for the run. Yeah. The stretches. Yeah. Connecting to the body, pouring it into sports. Yeah. Working out. Yeah. But breathing is extremely important. Just like that. It only took a few seconds. Take a deep breath and breathe out. When we do that, it signals our body to regulate all of that energy. There's electrical energy and there's chemical energy happening in the body that's creating this feeling of uncontrollable anger. So when we stay silent and we instead start to breathe, it gives us a moment to think, step two, which will then help us to reframe our perception and to be able to respond instead of react. A lot of times we shouldn't really respond at all right now. We should wait. A lot of times we should give space and time to a situation before reacting or responding to it. When a child does something very upsetting, we don't need to respond right away. If we're a parent, you don't need to snap and yell. It's not really teaching the child anything, by the way, to snap and yell at the child. It just teaches them fear motivators, so they're supposed to learn to be afraid and be motivated by the fear, by the retribution. You're teaching them, you're modeling anger response, which isn't helpful. Um, it's not teaching the child anything. The child learns through your modeling and in the conversation that you have with them in a calm setting. So you can teach them empathy, so they learn to stop leaving their toys all over the place or not doing what you told them out of a sense of duty, responsibility, morality, and empathy. But they have to learn those things. You're not born with duty, responsibility, morality, and empathy. You are born with fear. So if you keep going to that base emotion, fear, 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 you're stunting the development of the child. True discipline is teaching. So instead, you want to just take a breath, walk away. This isn't life or death. Come back when you're calm, sit the child down, talk to the child, even very young. Talking young children here, 5, 6 years old. You're having a conversation with them. It's teaching them maturity. It's teaching them maturity. And through conversation, they can learn faster. The neural pathways are able to be created and absorb information when we're not under stress. If you put a child under stress, they don't learn faster, right? So I don't know why a lot of moms will yell at their child while the child's supposed to be doing homework. Like, multiply, multiply, carry the one. It's not helpful. The child can't think while you're yelling at the child. And then they're just getting more mad. Don't do that. Don't do that. There's some dads who do that too. Don't do that. It has to be calm. Otherwise, you got to walk away and come back. Does that make sense? That's the only way a child learns. It's the only way we learn as well. And so give yourself the benefit of being calm so that you can process the information and you can come back to it. There's a scripture that says the insight of a man slows down his anger. Insight is understanding. Understanding takes thinking, takes wisdom. So we need to be silent, observe, think, see how we can look at other perspectives. How do they feel? What are their weaknesses in the situation? How do I feel? What is their justification for their action? When we're insightful like that, then we're not quick to anger anymore because we understand things and we understand the situation. We're not as easily thrown off. The reality of anger is that it doesn't produce good results. There are actually very few situations where anger is the proper response. Very few. Very few. So you're going through life thinking that anger is the proper response sometimes. And I'm telling you right now, no. Most of the time, anger is actually an improper response to what you're going through. Anger would become useful if you needed to protect your child from an immediate predator danger that's attacking them, or protect yourself from being physically under assault immediately. Then the anger can help you to run faster, jump higher, punch harder to protect yourself. Outside of those situations, anger is generally inappropriate as a response to the situation. Sorry. You can go through your Rolodex of times that you think where anger is a justified response, but it's actually inappropriate. Justification for your feelings exists. You can be justified to feel upset about things that you see or experience, but it's not an appropriate or effective response. It doesn't get you anywhere. If a police officer treats me unfairly, does me getting angry solve the situation? No. If I don't like something my wife said, does me getting angry solve the situation? No. If I don't like something my kid said, does me getting angry? It's not actually effective. So let's keep silent. That's step number one. Step number two, let's think, let's analyze. And then step number three, let's find a way of releasing energy that's constructive instead of just trying to vent out and do what our feelings are telling us to do. It's our job to switch our perceptions.